So here's the thing. This WWDC was bound to be a weird one, but boy, was it a weird one. Now look, a lot of people expect hardware at every Apple event, but that's just not typical of WWDC. The last hardware announcement we got at a DubDub was the 2019 Mac Pro. And before that, it was the 2017 iMac Pro. And before that, I think it was the 2013 Mac Pro. WWDC is not for hardware, it's for software. Really, it's for developers. And at an event in the afternoon called State of the Union, they get into the more nitty-gritty details of what was announced earlier in the morning at the public keynote, what pretty much everyone else sees. And in this video, I'm going to talk about several cool things announced in the State of the Union that Apple just didn't mention in the public keynote. But I'm also going to talk about the keynote because it was just a little bit weird because of how tense developer relations have been lately. Look, the whole Epic Games v. Apple lawsuit has brought out a lot of internal documents and emails that reveal not a very good side of Apple, kind of just how poorly and of how little value Apple views its developers. And that has already taken this tense relationship between Apple and developers and soured it even more. And this was felt through the entirety of the keynote, in my opinion, with, for example, an unusually long section about the Health app and a several-minute segment featuring the Apple Home app without a single new product announcement. Pretty much everything they talked about had already been announced previously in the keynote, or in the case of Matter, months ago. And it really wasn't until the end that Apple even talked about the features coming for developers, and it did so with an unusual lack of enthusiasm and self-congratulation. Now look, that's not to say that WWDC was a wash. iOS 15 and macOS Monterey bring some really cool features that we're going to talk about, but with no hardware to announce for consumers and no good news for developers, I've really seen a lot of disappointed and soured faces. I'm going to try and turn that ship around because there's some cool stuff, but this is not going to be a WWDC to remember. Let's start off with iOS 15 because most of what happens here happens on the iPad and on the Mac as well. In fact, I can't remember a recent software release where pretty much all of the operating systems get the same features. It's great. To start, Apple has kind of scoped the crosshairs right onto Zoom, giving FaceTime some much needed attention. You will now be able to kind of schedule FaceTime calls in advance by generating share links or calendar events that you can send to friends, clients, etc. And what's more, perhaps most surprisingly, the receiving end, well, they don't need FaceTime natively. If they're on an Android phone or Windows PC, they can still participate in a call using FaceTime in the browser, which is very cool. It's still end-to-end encrypted, and it has a similar feature set to those using the native FaceTime app. But perhaps unsurprisingly, people on that end can't initiate a FaceTime call, only participate in one. If you want to start a FaceTime call, you're still going to need an Apple device. But once you're actually on the call, you can use RTX voice, noise isolation, to block unwanted noise, or conversely, wide spectrum noise to welcome all the noise. Spatial audio is added if you have AirPods, and according to Apple, it reduces meeting fatigue by placing people's voices kind of spatially where they're oriented on screen. This seems a little bit gimmicky to me, but I will be sure to give you my feedback on my beta coverage coming over the next few weeks. Perhaps most importantly, and a theme that kind of continues throughout iOS 15, sharing. Now, when you're on a FaceTime call with friends, you can use what's called SharePlay, which allows you to listen to music together, watch TV or video content together. Heck, you can even share your own screen. I see this being a huge perk for, say, students using Google Docs without having to do in-person collaboration, or a movie night with friends. And on the less cool side of things, tech support for grandma and grandpa being able to see their screen while you're talking to them to help assist remotely. That sounds amazing. But look, sharing continues far beyond FaceTime, and it's, like I mentioned, kind of a theme in iOS. iOS will begin to keep track of links that your friends and family send you in iMessage, and corresponding apps will kind of remind you of their sharing every time you open them. So News, for example, has a section for articles shared by your friends. Music will have a list of songs and playlists shared. Safari will have a list of web pages, etc. And when friends share multiple photos in iMessage, they now appear as a collage or stack of images. and they can be automatically added to a special portion of the Photos app, which is really cool. But it only does it if Apple thinks that they're relevant to you. Using AI, they'll add images that you're in, for example, but exclude memes. If this works, this could be awesome because photo sharing in iOS has, to put it kindly, pretty much always sucked. And I would just airdrop friends' photos. But if I can now reliably send them an iMessage and they'll just show up seamlessly in Photos, that's nice. Now, this next feature is one that I'm pretty excited for because I gotta be honest, I struggle a little bit with not getting distracted while working. This new feature is called Focus, and Android has a slight variant of this if you have a work profile installed, and some OEMs like Samsung let you take it even further, but I think Apple's implementation goes not deeper, but more elegantly because it doesn't take over your entire phone. You can set up a profile or a focus for any activity you want. Work, home, exercise, bedtime, etc. And the phone will even try to dynamically and automatically set those things. So if I arrive to the office, it's going to turn on the work profile. When I drive home, it turns on the home profile. But anyway, you can dedicate a home screen to that focus so that when, for example, work mode is on, it shows my work apps and widgets on a home screen. It also allows you to select which apps and which people are permitted to notify you when a specific profile is enabled. So no more Instagram notifications when I'm in my work mode, and perhaps everyone but my coworkers will be silenced. What's even better is that you can choose to notify your iMessage contacts that you're in a certain focus and have notifications disabled, so they don't think you're just blowing them off and they know why you're not responding. Now, in a case of an emergency, you can still allow certain contacts to get through if they need to, which is handy. And yes, for about the first time in forever, Apple has finally addressed notifications. Notifications in iOS have always been abysmal. It is a thing that Android does so much better and has always done so much better that it's not even funny. But the gap may be starting to close. Instead of showing you just a bunch of irrelevant spam from apps, all notifications that are not from humans get moved into a summary list. Now, if you open the summary, the most important notifications that the phone determines to be important are sorted at the top, and the least important are at the bottom. Now, normal people, they still get through just like regular traditional notifications, and that's nice because they don't get stuck in the cruft and the crap of all the other automated, notifications that you're going to get. This is a big improvement to the ancient, awful system that Apple has implemented in the past. Now, if only they actually enforced their rules on apps not sending you garbage notifications in the first place. Now, a smaller but very cool update is live text. From the camera app, Safari, Photos, really anywhere, you can highlight text inside of an image that is OCR'd, and then, you can do whatever you want with it. You can paste it or act upon it. If the text is actionable, like a phone number or email is there, you can just click it directly inside of the image. It's really pretty freaking cool. And it even does live translation. Now, you can also use something that Apple calls visual lookup. Using neural image recognition, it'll tell you about the stuff in your picture, like the genus of plant or the breed of dog, etc. This is literally Google Lens. Like, it is exactly the same thing, but it's used system-wide in iOS, and I think it's going to be a huge hit amongst people like me who are just geeks like that, but students and other people. I mean, this really looks great. Now, let's get to a rapid-fire bunch of smaller updates. There's a redesigned Safari. We'll talk about more when we get to the Mac, but it now supports extensions, which is excellent if there are certain plugins that you want to use. And that address bar, that's been moved to the bottom, so there's no longer any finger acrobats to use your web browser. Nice. The wallet now supports UWB NFC devices, and there will soon be hotel door keys, home deadbolts, garage door openers, and cars that just unlock whenever you tap your phone on them, which is pretty cool. Additionally, digital ID cards are being added, and in like 45 to 600 years, when all of the states in the United States decide to support them, I'm looking at you, Utah, it'll be handy to truly be able to give up your wallet and just travel with your phone for your credit card, for your identification, etc. And you'll even be able to travel through TSA checkpoints without physical identification, which is freaking awesome. Now, Maps also got a big update in certain cities, and I must say it looks exceptional. Now look, I know that Apple Maps generally gets worse the further you veer away from California, but I used it in Tokyo, and I found the metro information to be way better and more reliable and more clear than Google Maps. And here in Salt Lake City, where I live, Apple Maps has generally been more accurate and quicker. I'm a big fan, and these updates look great. Spotlight now shows rich results when you search a contact in your phone or a celebrity, place, or thing. And look, I'm bored. Let's talk about the stuff that they didn't announce in the keynote that looks good. So Focus, that thing I mentioned earlier where you can set a profile. Yeah, well, they have status APIs so that third-party messaging apps can also set away statuses, which is amazing. Number 2, notification muting. If a thread is really active and iOS just sees that you're not engaging in it, it'll suggest that you mute the entire thread. Number 3, you can now add multiple passes to Wallet instead of one by one at a time like a troglodyte. Next, you can now select a different color for your left and right eye on Memoji. They talked about how Siri will now do on-device processing so that A, data doesn't get sent to the cloud, but B, just results in much faster processing, which is great. They showed this demo where it did a bunch of things that Siri would normally do, and it hauled butt. Awesome. And you can also now finally ask contextual questions. Google Assistant has been doing this for like 37 years. But for example, I could say, is Chuck E. Cheese open? And then when it responds, I can follow up by saying, how long does it take to get there? Instead of having to reiterate that I'm talking about Chuck E. Cheese. Next up, you can schedule future HomeKit actions through Siri. So you can say, hey, turn off the lights at 7 p.m. or turn on the AC when I leave, and it will schedule those actions into the future. Very cool. There's finally a progress bar in the Files app when you're performing a copy or move action, which holy smokes, that could not have come sooner. If you're using iCloud Keychain for passwords, there's now a built-in authenticator to generate two-factor security codes. So you don't have to use Authy or Google Authenticator or SMS anymore, which is excellent. This one's big, temporary iCloud storage. So if you buy a new iOS device, you can use iCloud backup even if you don't have any iCloud backup data available. Like if you don't pay for a plan or you're out of storage or whatever, Apple will let you use as much as you need to move to your new device free of charge, and they'll store it for up to 3 weeks. This is excellent for people who don't want to pay for iCloud, but who also don't want to deal with the nightmare that is an iCloudless device upgrade. This is very good. And while I think Apple should just give people more than 5 gigs of storage by default, it's better than nothing. The Dark Sky acquisition is finally bearing its fruits because not only do you get full screen weather maps, but you also get next hour precipitation notifications, which is very handy. You can now view EXIF metadata for photos, which is sweet. The time picker sucks less now. You can scroll or you can tap and then type out the time, which is really handy. Best of all, the magnification loop is back. You can exactly see the text that you're selecting. That magnification loop was there from like the very early days of iOS, and then they took it out because, oh, it's too skeuomorphic and it looks unnatural. But then you can see what you're highlighting under your finger, and it sucked and it's been awful. Finally, redemption is here and the magnification loop is back in iOS 15, and oh my goodness, am I happy about that. iOS 15, it's going to be out later this fall, and it's coming to every device that runs iOS 14, which means that yes, your iPhone 6s is going to get at least 7 years of software updates, which is incredible. Yet another reason that the iPhone is just a better value buy than most people believe it to be. And I know there's going to be people commenting down below that say, oh, well, they're just making it slower and they're throttling and all that stuff. I don't think so, actually, but even if they were, that's better than not being able to use your phone in 7 years because it's too out of date and there's too many security bugs and half the apps that you try to install won't run because you're using too old of a version of Android. All in all, pretty good updates, and I think iOS 15 is going to be awesome. This video is sponsored by RAVPower and their excellent new 120-watt desktop charger. So I've been using the 65-watt variant that I talked about a few months ago as my primary charging station near my bed. It works great for my iPhone, my MacBook, Nintendo Switch, and more. Pretty much anything with a USB-C or a USB-A port. Their new 120-watt variant packs in some serious thunder and can charge a 16-inch MacBook Pro in just over an hour and a half. Thanks to gallium nitride 2 technology, this charger is not only 20% smaller, but has a 20% higher output than most other desktop chargers on the market, and it does so without even getting warm. You can charge up to 4 devices simultaneously at high speed, and RAVPower throws in a premium USB-C cable as well for free because, well, I don't know why. They're great. At $89.99 retail, it's already a pretty good deal, but for a limited time, you can get this thing for just $80, which is insane. Thanks to RAVPower for their support of Snazzy Labs. Okay, no more Mr. Nice Guy. Now it's time for me to get pissed off because I'm talking about iPadOS 15. Look, I was one of the fools that believed that this year was going to be a huge year for the iPad. I mean, Apple just shipped an iPad with an M1 and a mini LED display that's crying to have creative content displayed on it, and we got nothing. This is now the third year that iPadOS has allegedly stood apart from iOS. But for what? Most of the updates this year was just crap that the iPad never got last year, like the app library and Springboard widgets. Woohoo! iPadOS 15 is just iOS 14, and that is not a good look for the device that you continue to state Apple is class-leading and can be a bona fide desktop replacement. Now look, that's not to say that all of the updates were bad. Multitasking, which has long been too confusing for novices but too limited for pros, sees big improvements this year. There's now a persistent little tab at the top of the device that allows you to handle split view screens. And you can now dismiss one half of a split view and open up a replacement app, which is really handy. Furthermore, apps can have multiple windows open from within themselves. And you can have a center window, which kind of acts as the focus of your workflow if you touch and hold an item. You might be thinking, wait a minute, multiple windows? Yes, there's even a shelf, which I don't know what they call it, just a shelf, which allows you to see all of the open windows in a given application or workflow, and you can quickly switch between them. You can also create a split view space in the app switcher, and all of this can be done with keyboard shortcuts so you never have to lift a finger. It still seems a little bit convoluted and kind of unintuitive and confusing, but short of kind of absorbing valuable real estate for something like a menu bar, which is, they're never going to do that. It's pretty good. It's definitely an improvement over iPadOS 14. Now, the new features from iOS 15, well, they make their way over as well, but there are also some cute and unnecessary features like Quick Note that make their way to the iPad. But look, all in all, Apple just demonstrated today that they don't actually believe what they preach. At least not what they preach to their customers and developers. This is now the 5th year that they have called the iPad a pro device. And where's Final Cut Pro? Where is Motion? Where is Xcode? Where is Logic? Where is MainStage? They're nowhere to be found. They now have an iPad with an M1. And, oh, cute, yeah, you can have this fun little widget and you can write a little note by swiping up from the bottom corner. I mean, what the heck, Apple? They did release a new update to Swift Playgrounds, which will allow you to write, compile, and run development apps on device. Pretty cool. You can even actually publish them on the App Store. But this is going to be severely limited. It is no Xcode. And look, maybe it's just a little glimmer into the future of iPadOS. I have to believe and I have to have hope that there are teams actively working on this crap. And I guess now I can only hope that they release it in 2022. But whenever they release these apps, if they ever release them, it took them too long and it really hindered their single best product from reaching its full potential for years. And I'm not going to believe them when they tell me that the iPad is a pro product until they believe it themselves. It should be, it deserves to be, and it's not. And that's a shame. All right, I'm going to get happy again. The single coolest thing announced at WWDC was Universal Control. This thing looks straight out of a friggin' sci-fi show. It's basically a KVM between Mac and iPad, and holy smokes, I cannot wait to use it. You will be able to use your mouse and keyboard across multiple devices running different OSs. I can control my iPad with my iMac's mouse and drag it between two screens. This is not Sidecar, it's not macOS on the iPad. It is the iPad running independently of the Mac, but together. Oh, that is so cool. It even works for more than two devices. For example, an iMac, a MacBook, and an iPad. You can even drag and drop files and share clipboard history. Unbelievably cool and exactly what I want. Now look, don't misinterpret my rant that I just did as basically asking Apple to put macOS on the iPad. I do not want that. And iPadOS has some amazing strengths. In fact, I do a lot of my work on the iPad. Hey, which was an email client I used until a few weeks ago, had an amazing iOS app and the world's most abysmal, awful Electron Mac app. It was garbage, and I stopped using the service primarily because the desktop app was so bad. But if I could prop up my iPad to the side of my Mac and use the same keyboard and mouse workflow, That'd be friggin' sweet. Make sure you're subscribed because we are definitely going to be checking this out later this week. I cannot wait. Now that brings us to macOS Monterey. This update is not as big as Big Sur. It's certainly not visually. But macOS 12 really brings some nice changes, and I agree with my podcast co-host Stephen Hackett that it finally seems that Apple cares about equality when it comes to the Mac again. It is no longer neglected, and basically every major feature that I have mentioned in this video so far for iPhone and iPad, they are also coming to the Mac. Focus, Messages, FaceTime, Quick Note, Live Text, etc. That's all coming, and that is excellent. There are a few Mac-specific features that I want to mention though. For one, Safari has been completely redesigned and it looks pretty trippy, man. But I think I'll get used to it. It looks different on the iPhone as well. But look, Safari on the desktop, it's just my desktop browser of choice. It is lightning fast, it is responsive, and it syncs my tabs across all of my devices. It's also one of the two major browsers remaining that haven't given up and just run Chromium. Firefox, you are also loved, and I appreciate you for not giving in to Google. Now look, the new Safari has streamlined the tab bar and actually moves the address field based on where the tab is. It looks kind of weird, but I think it'll be a fairly quick adjustment. The window will also change colors based on the background color of the website you're visiting, which is a nice, although completely unnecessary touch. Tab groups now also exist, which is, well, pretty much a group of tabs. And you can save a bunch of tabs as part of a project or as part of a list or as part of a certain workflow that you want to do, and they sync between Safari for iOS and iPadOS. A lot of people are really excited about this, not me, but I don't really do my consistent workflows in a browser. If every morning you opened up, Slack and Gmail and whatever in your browser, that would be kind of handy, but I don't really do any work natively in the browser. Shortcuts for iOS has done really well, and a lot of macOS users were kind of intimidated by Automator, seeing how complicated tasks can get. And so Apple's just put shortcuts on the Mac. You can now access them from the dock, from the menu bar, from Finder, from Spotlight, Siri. Apple's made them kind of available everywhere. And just like regular shortcuts, you can easily share them with a click. You can make your own or import others that you find on the web. Heck, you can even import your old Automator actions if you so choose. The shortcuts community is really strong on iOS. It gets pretty geeky pretty fast, but I'm a fan and I hope we see a similar community flourish for the Mac. You can also AirPlay content from any device to your Mac just like you would a TV or HomePod, which is great. This is a feature that I have long questioned the absence of. No more airdropping a web page. I can just throw the video up right from my iPhone. Pretty handy. Now, there are a bunch of other small things that we just frankly don't have time to go into detail on, like the addition of Tai Chi and Pilates to Fitness Plus, the launch of what Apple dubs as iCloud Plus, which does end-to-end encryption and blocks trackers simultaneously, kind of like a VPN and an ad blocker combined. Now, it does have one cool feature, though, called Hide My Email, and it basically just generates a bogus email address that forwards to your iCloud email that you can kill or disable whenever you want. Over the coming days and weeks, we will be looking at the betas extensively, as well as all of their hidden features. If that is something you would like to see, be sure to get subscribed, and if there's something in particular that you want to see, be sure to include it in a comment down below. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it. If you didn't, well, that other button seems to work okay too. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, stay snazzy. See you later, folks.